Have you ever thought of taking your boys out of school so that they could help your husband work in the field?
No, sir.
You want them to finish school?
I want them to finish the school. I'll try the best to education as much as I can so they won't have to be working like we are. Because they need to learn how to read and write and talk good English and speak good English so they can get a better job. Because if they don't go to school, they'll never have a better job than what we are doing right now. They'll be a migrant all their lives. And I don't want them to be that.
Porque este documentario es para el gobierno de Indiana y quieren saber qué les parece, por qué es importante educación.
La educación para mí es importante porque no quiero ver a mis hijos en un futuro en ese trabajo. Quiero que sean mejores personas y la educación es importantísimo. Para mí es la prioridad, que ellos estudien y sean unas personas de bien y que no tengan que venir a este trabajo pudiendo hacer algo mejor.
It's important that I keep studying, that way I won't have to be out here when I'm older, and that way I can go find another job, one that I'm good at, and that it will benefit me and my family.
Bueno, yo vengo de Monterrey, Nuevo León, y soy parte de la familia migrante porque mi esposo fue el primero que se vino para acá a arreglar. Migrante no indocumentada, porque nosotros trabajamos. Y no tengo nada en contra de las personas indocumentadas, porque ellas también trabajan con nosotros, pero para que no digan de que migrante y inmigrante es la misma palabra y no es.
¿Cómo se siente usted de tener que mudarse 2 veces al año?
Pues a veces es estresante porque tienes que dejar a tus hijos, como este año se me quedaron 2 allá y el año pasado, por darles un ejemplo, uno de mis muchachos se me desmayó, lo llevaron al hospital y pues yo estaba aquí en el estado de Indiana y no hallaron ni qué hacer. Pero por mientras no saben ni qué está pasando y es muy, muy estresante cuando no saben ni qué hacer. Pero pues así es la vida del migrante, tenemos que estar aquí 6 meses aquí en el estado de Indiana y 6 meses en el estado de Texas.
They move around a lot. They're moving from farm to farm depending on the harvest. They may not be able to carry the luxuries of life that a lot of us get to have. They're constantly on the go so that they're in and out of different schools and they don't get that constant that a lot of students get to benefit from.
I definitely think that'd be tough. Everyone just sits down with their friends. Then you get that core group of friends that you hang out with all the time, but then you'd have to switch and you'd have to find a new group of friends, and that'd just be tough.
Absolutely, that'd be terrible because then getting situated in a school to start the school year is difficult, let alone doing it 3 times a year in a different place where you haven't lived before.
I'll stay in Florida for the longest. I'll stay there for 6 months because strawberry season starts there. Then we go to North Carolina for blueberries, and after blueberry season's over, then we come back here. And then this is our last journey before we go back home.
it really breaks up their education. I feel that they might be a little jaded on just the educational system from moving around from place to place. It'd have to be tough. You have to admit to yourself, moving 3 times a year or, even twice a year to start over would be tough.
Think about your ability as an adult to make transitions that frequently. It's difficult for students to make a lot of transitions.
They have interrupted schooling. So when you are moving from one school to another, you lose a lot in the movement.
When students' learning is interrupted through moves, even though a lot of the states are teaching from the same group of standards, it's still difficult for a child to go from one unit about addition and subtraction and then moving to a new school where they're talking about something completely different. So they have gaps in their education where they are learning one topic at one school and then maybe at the next school doesn't even get touched on because it was already taught.
Florida has different classes, so sometimes I have to take classes here that I can't really take in Florida because they don't have them. We get final exams, and sometimes the final exams cover things that the kids learn from the beginning of the school year, and it's something we haven't learned because we just been out of state. So it impacts your grade negatively.
One young man this year actually had to take a whole month of February off. That month hurt him academically, and I think also socially too. I think he missed out on some groups of friends as a freshman in high school. It was pretty tough for him.
It really impacts not only the student academically, but socially. As a teacher, I see it all the time. When a new student comes in, it's like a social disconnect with the rest of the class. So some of these children are having that social disconnect multiple times a year.
I used to talk to almost all the students here. As we got older and I continued moving, all the friends I would make, they would forget. They didn't want to hang out with me anymore. So they would just ignore me. Before everybody would get here, I was the only Hispanic in the school, so I would always have to sit by myself and be by myself. And when there was a group project, I was the last one to get picked to be like partners with somebody else. So it was always very hard making friends.
And once you get to high school, you hope to have a close group of friends. But when you're gone all summer, those friends have spent time at the pool, at baseball games, at different activities that you never get to participate in, and you get back and they may not call you because they haven't had you, not that they don't like you, they just haven't had you around. And unfortunately, kids are very superficial, and if you're not there, you don't exist.
I think some of the challenges that face our migrant workers and their children, especially in our small towns, is lack of education in the small towns as to what the migrant population is. Maybe it is just from the smaller town, and maybe it's not, I'm not sure. But I think that's a problem for them, is being pigeonholed by assumptions and stereotypes that people have about them.
It was very hard because we never got treated the same by other kids. We would always get discriminated. A lot of people would tell us mean things because they didn't like us, just because we were Hispanics. That's the whole reason they wouldn't like us here.
I think in rural America, we do have our people that aren't as welcoming. I think a lot of it has to do with the generations that they've come from. I think it's harder because we don't have a lot of big cities or a lot of different nationalities that live in the same area. And so when you have a population that they are not as familiar with, I think maybe they aren't as welcoming just because they're not as familiar with them. I think if they would be open to communicating with them more, I think that would change.
Racism still exists. It deals with skin color, it deals with culture, it deals with language. Usually in our rural communities, walk into a school that's almost entirely white. So they feel marginalized and are marginalized from the moment they walk in because they're migrants. All these kids have known each other all their lives. They walk in and they have no idea who anybody is. It takes that barrier of feeling on the outside and it makes it a physical barrier as much as it is just a perceived barrier.
And I'm always advising my staff to say, our families, our children, because in my mind, that's what they are.
Bueno, a nosotros la educación de nuestros hijos es importante, muy importante, porque tratamos de que ellos sean mejores personas y pues que tengan un mejor futuro que nosotros. No, aunque sea, no nos sentimos menos por el trabajo que hacemos, sino lo contrario, nos gusta nuestro trabajo. Pero tratamos de que nuestros hijos sean mejores personas y preparadas y tengan un mejor futuro.
Hey there, my name is Caetano. I'm 17, in junior high school, and I'm hoping to, after graduating high school, go into college and studying biomedical engineering in Armstrong State University. Me, I've worked since I was 5 years old. I've always been in the fields, helping my mom and dad. Me and my family are pretty independent when it comes to asking for money. We've hardly ever asked for money. We don't like to ask for money. We try to get through with what we have.
The students in Caetano's school, as in many schools, know very little about the life of migrant workers.
Define a what?
A migrant worker?
Not sure.
Give me your definition of what a migrant worker is.
A what?
A migrant worker?
I have no clue.
Okay.
Is that? Well, what is that?
I don't know what a migrant worker is.
Yeah, kind of like somebody who came from a different country. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with it.
I'm not sure they know it exists. Like I said, I was totally surprised. I grew up in this community too. I'm from West Lafayette. I actually graduated from Harrison High School, and I had never heard of anyone being here like on a migrant basis just to work during the season and then to move on.
The crops are all in and the peaches are rotting. The oranges are piled in their creosote dumps. You're flying them back to the Mexico border to pay all their money to wade back again.
It has to do with the men, women, and children who harvest the crops in this country of ours, the best-fed nation on earth. These are the forgotten people, the underprotected, the undereducated, the underclothed, the underfed.
They have no voice in the legislative halls. They certainly have no voice in Congress. And their employers do have a voice.
I would like to be able to prove to you that they didn't want work by going and trying to pick them up and bring them here and saying, all right, let's pick these beans and see how many of them would really work. They will not work. They make out like they want to work, but they don't want to.
It's morally wrong, it seems to me, for any man, any employer, to exploit his workers.
They are the migrants, workers in the sweatshops of the soil, the harvest of shame.
With poverty, with living in rural areas, with decades and decades of not having union, problems have been accumulating. It's a reservoir, a dam made up of workers' problems. And so we don't only fight to get a contract, but we got to go fight the school, the police department, the welfare department, the hospital, everywhere, you know, to try and get the justice back for the worker that he didn't have because he was poor, unorganized, and no political power.
I think their very lack of progress and their very lack of success in signing up members has shown that the industrial type of union which they represent has no place or application to agriculture.
It should be the responsibility of all Americans to see that no American is deprived of the quality of life that the rest of us take for granted. It has been 10 years since Edward R. Murrow made Harvest of Shame. We hope that no one will need to make a film about migrants 10 years from now.
What has changed, we asked, in the decades since NBC News investigated these conditions? At the time of the 1970 White Paper, these rundown shacks, now abandoned, were home for thousands of workers. When we first showed them, Florida officials said it was a distorted picture, that housing for migrants was more than adequate. Tonight we'll report on what conditions are now.
The migrants are no more than a reflection of my economic position.
So if they've got a tough, you've got a tough
If
tip.
I can't do good there is no way the migrants can do good.
So in other words, you're working, but you're just falling further behind. Mm-hmm. How's that make you feel? Working out in the sun and you end up owing them money.
It made me feel rough.
You say rough.
Everyone who knows anything about this situation agrees that the best hope for the future of the migrants lies in the education of their children. But for the children of migrants, education is not easy to come by. Approximately 1 out of every 500 children whose parents are still migrant laborers finishes grade school. Approximately 1 out of every 5,000 ever finishes high school. And there is no case upon the record of the child of a migrant laborer ever receiving a college diploma.
I never sent my kids, the big ones, to the school in Indiana because they didn't like Spanish people in Indiana in the school. I sent one time, and they, send them back. He don't like the Spanish people. He said they don't like Mexican.
80% of migrant children never enter a high school classroom. More than half don't even get to the 7th grade. The few who do are pitifully far behind, despite streamlined remedial reading programs and dedicated teachers like Sally Carey of Belglade High School.
And it takes the child a while to adjust to a classroom situation, to get to know the teacher and what she wants. And they have to do this off and on throughout the year, and without any, stable home to come home to, it's more difficult to adjust.
What do you think will become of your students after they leave school?
Work in the fields.
The federal government estimates there are 800,000 farm workers under the age of 16. The dropout rate for children of migrant families is 80%. Today in Florida, as 10 years ago, most migrant children never reach high school. And because migrant youngsters are always the new kids in school, they are often treated cruelly by their peers.
When you come there, they laugh at you, how you look and dress. And they say you smell, stinky.
They call you stinky?
Yeah.
I'll pay you 50 cents more for the jar of pickles. Just, I don't want to be eating pickles picked by a kid. Can you guarantee me that?
I can't guarantee you that, but I can guarantee you that we're trying to do something about it.
This is the year 2008. This is the United States of America. And quite frankly, I think all over this country, people are shocked to learn that in America today, slavery exists.
We have to resist the seduction of the notion that we can advance ourselves as a people by leaving our poor brothers and sisters behind. If we cannot win this fight, we have lost the soul of America.
More than 50 years later, the life of a migrant laborer is still an ordeal. And not just for adults. Perhaps as many as 500,000 children, some as young as 7 years old, are out in the fields and orchards working 9 to 10 hours a day under brutal conditions.
Some people think that whenever they hear me say that I go to work every day, that I hate it. But I've come to accept the fact that I'm gonna have to go to work. So there's pretty much no point in me just having to argue with my parents and saying that I don't want to go.
Lo empecé a enseñar desde los 5 años a trabajar. Y te llevo a trabajar, le dije, no porque yo quiera hacer dinero con usted, sino para que aprendan y en un futuro ustedes sepan, le digo, distinguir, le digo, el trabajo, porque cualquier trabajo que tú hagas es digno, pero le dije, hay que tratar de salir adelante, superarse.
In 2010, Virginia Sanchez was rushed to the hospital in unbearable pain. During an emergency appendectomy, her heart stopped beating, and she awoke the next morning to discover that she had almost died.
Pasó 10 días de la operación y empecé a trabajar. Es duro porque no hay quien nos ayude. Y yo por mis hijos. me fui a trabajar. Mi esposo me llevaba una silla y me sentaba en la silla. Así me sentaba allí a trabajar. Tenía que ayudar porque es un trabajo que se termina. Entonces aprovechaba yo para trabajar.
The result has been that the farm workers have suffered and grown much more slowly economically than any other segment of our society. It's terribly unfair and very unreasonable and very, very unjust. And these people have suffered tremendously. And I think we need legislation. Whether we will pass legislation, whether we will recognize the injustice, I think is still questionable.
In 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson and Congress enacted the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, or ESA. It proclaimed that an education is a right for all children in America.
From our very beginnings as a nation, we have felt a very fierce commitment to the ideal of education for everyone. As a son of a tenant farmer, I know that education is the only valid passport from poverty. As a former teacher, and I hope a future one, I have great expectations of what this law will mean for all of our young people. We have established the law. Let us not delay in putting it to work.
It was found that this act could not help students of migrant families because of their frequent moving. So in 1966, they appended ESA with the Migrant Education Program, or MEP. Congress showed continuing commitment to ESA by passing No Child Left Behind in 2001, and again in 2015 with the backing of President Obama passing the Every Student Succeeds Act. Since 1966, the Migrant Education Program has been arguably the most impactful government program on migrant families' lives.
The Migrant Program is a federally funded program. These dollars come directly from the U.S. Department of Education with federal funds. Indiana taxpayers are not footing the bill for this program, and these funds come regardless of whether or not you have a strong program to support them.
The prior administration had just recently received a letter from the U.S. Department of Education which was basically criticizing Indiana for its lack of spending of the migrant funds and was sending millions of dollars back to the federal government, simply just not using it. There was a lack of grants that were being provided to school districts. There was a lack of a system in which to distribute those dollars and then to provide those services. So the financial dollars were there, but they were not being utilized.
We had to do something different. We knew that we had children that were not receiving the services that they were entitled to. We knew that we had parents and families that were not happy with the program, that weren't happy with what the department had been doing. We wanted a centralized hub that would support all the students in that area and not worry whether or not they were in one school district or another. One of the long-standing employees with the program, Doris Waters, she suggested, well, what if we thought about this regionally? We talked with our schools here about how could we better structure our program to provide optimal support so that we're providing it to all of our students.
They were asking lots of questions, and I thought, you know, they're here for a different reason. They want to see the program, but I'm beginning to feel like they have something else to tell us. And so when they started proposing this idea of regional centers and whether or not we would be one, of course I said, yes, sign us up immediately.
The reason the regional model works so well is because we have a network of centers that are working towards the same goal with the same information. We're able to collect data, make decisions. We're able to strengthen our program so that if you're in one place in Indiana and you move to a different one, you're going to still have a streamlined support of services throughout the state, no matter where you are.
So within 1 year of implementation, we doubled the number of students that were being identified. We went from 900 or so students to close to 1,800. And then of those 1,800, we provided services to 97% of them. Well, the regional directors were ecstatic at the amount of work that was coming to them. As they worked with school districts and built capacity, their workload increased, which is a great thing.
This is what we want. This is what our vision is of how we should function and work and how we can provide services to our families. It's really about identifying students, making sure that we serve them so that they have all of the gaps in their education filled, that they have all the obstacles in front of them removed so that they can be successful.
Previously, before we had the Migrant Regional Centers, we had one statewide recruiter, and then we had recruiters that were hired during the busy season. And so every single year, we basically had a new group of recruiters that were coming in. They didn't have the historical understanding or the relationships in the regions, and that made it difficult. They're basically starting from scratch every single year.
The recruiter is the first thing that a program has to have, because if there is no recruiters, there are no kids to serve. So that's the first piece of this whole puzzle.
What motivates me is I go out there to identify these families so we could get those students out of these places where they stay, bring them out of those places and into the classroom so we could provide them with a good meal and, most important, an education.
I believe that recruitment is the first service that a program can provide to a family. As recruiters, we don't ask about documentation or any information about legal status. We don't share the COE with any other organization. What we ask is, what was the purpose of the move? What work are you looking for? And do you have children that are the right age? They want to fly below the radar. They don't normally go out into the community and start looking for the services that they need. If there aren't migrant recruiters out there, the migrant families will still be in the shadows.
Prior to this past year, the recruiters actually worked for the Indiana Department of Education. But since then, the new movement is they send a recruiter to each region. And that's been a huge benefit for us. Alex, our recruiter, is vitally important. He is our hands-on out in the field. So the rapport that he is able to establish with our local farmers, with the recruiters that bring in the workers from the other countries, other states, Alex meets them as soon as he finds out they're in the area. He goes out and makes a contact with them and then gets them signed up. And that's one thing that makes Alex very unique. He not only cares for them as far as getting them education, but he cares for them as an individual.
A true recruiter is covering all their angles and all the bases, going out into community and talking to employers, to other community agencies, and trying to see a way that there could be collaboration. A recruiter is the one that is known not just within the school walls, but outside in the community as well.
The recruiter is actually the most important component of the migrant program. The recruiter needs to go out, find those families, do the interviews, and instantly create a rapport with the family so that they will trust them and be able to answer those questions that she's asking without the fear that there is something that they're being investigated for, that is just a way to help their families.
Without recruiters, we don't have a program. Without recruiters, our students don't get served.
I feel kind of bummed out at the end of the day is when I don't identify enough people. Right now, as a recruiter, our main focus is to promote this program. So once we spread this word, we're going to get more families or more workers bringing their families into the state of Indiana.
Big thing they added this year that's just really been fantastic is they added a lot more technology. So they were able to hire some very top-notch individuals to help write the curriculum. So our students are able to meet standards in a fun way through technology to get them ready for the 21st century.
We created a wish list of all of our toys. We then went out and found 20 teachers across the state.
It was kind of an interesting experience because they gave us all this technology and said, we're going to find a way to use this technology in the classroom.
So once we got going into the project, it really started blowing up. The problem that we found was we had tons of lessons now, and none of them were building upon each other because the math people would take it a certain way and the language arts people would take it a certain way. And we said, we have to combine this lesson. So we said, we're gonna have to think cross-curricularly. So math people, give it the language arts person. And you guys are gonna figure out how to take your two lessons and combine them. Once they started doing that, they really started bridging the gap as to what we were looking for from these lessons. And we get some educators in the migrant community that are like, these students don't need this. They really need to learn their math. They need to be hit on math and language arts all the time. And our mindset is you can still do that. But now you're adding a troubleshooting component. You're adding an engagement piece that they didn't have. Really, and Andy speaks of this a lot better, but it's really about the Karate Kid effect. You're doing all these fundamental things, but you really have no idea what you're doing until you put it all together.
It goes back to the tools versus toys kind of conversation with the Karate Kid learnings. Daniel-san walks in, wants to know karate because he's getting bullied, and Mr. Miyagi says, yeah, I'll teach you karate, and then proceeds to teach him all sorts of chores. I love the scene in the movie where Daniel's just frustrated. He's been painting all day. Mr. Miyagi comes home from fishing and he says, I've been asking you to teach me karate and I haven't learned a thing. And of course, Mr. Miyagi then stops, puts his gear down and says, show me wax on, wax off. Catch! 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 And I love that scene where he's just going through it all and Mr. Miyagi's punching and kicking, he's blocking. But the best part is when he's all done, if you look at it, Miyagi bows to him and Daniel's just stunned because he's processing like, oh my gosh, this whole time you've been sneaking in this karate on me. So we're kind of doing the same thing, and I tried to do the same thing when I was in the classroom with a little bit of more of a fun twist. I wasn't giving them chores and things to make them, think, oh, this is awful and terrible. Really what I was doing was the exact opposite. I wanted them to see the game, see the fun, see the toy, because then they're hooked, then they're engaged, then they're coming back. If I say, hey, today we're gonna learn all about the scientific method, we're gonna read about it, and they're gonna read about other people's experiments about it, and then we're gonna think of an idea that we could use the scientific method for, and then you're gonna write it down. The kids that love science are gonna be like, yes. But most of the others are gonna check out. They're gonna be like, I don't know what that is. It doesn't sound interesting, doesn't exciting. But if I walk in and I say, all right guys, today we're gonna fly a drone. Anybody interested in flying a drone? No, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm pretty certain about 100% of my kids are gonna say, yeah, I wanna fly a drone. So we'll go out and we'll fly a drone. We'll just learn how it works, learn the rules and regulations. Then we come in maybe a week later, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks later after we've had some time. And now I say, all right, cool, today we're gonna go out and fly the drone. But as you fly the drone, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about a problem that you might be having with the drone. So I want you to ask a question with the drone. And then I want you to write down an idea of how you might solve that problem. So what we start doing then is I'm sneaking in some of that scientific method on them. But what do they hear? We're going out and flying the drone again today. So it's that Karate Kid effect of the fact that they're learning, but they have no idea that it's occurring until that time that they need to prove what they know.
How's your relationship with your parents?
We've had arguments, me and my parents, and I get kind of frustrated at them, and I think about that for a second and say that, hey, you actually have a dad or you actually have a mom, and you're over here getting mad at them while other kids are just struggling to even have one parent or none at all.
Would you like to tell your parents how you feel about them?
Sí, que estoy agradecido que sean mis padres y que me hayan soportado por ayudarme en la escuela y ayudarme en jugar el fútbol y soportarme en eso también. Que se hagan salir de trabajo para ir a recogerme de prácticas y llevarme a los juegos y todo eso. Estoy
consecuencias. Porque para mí tú eres lo más importante en el trabajo. Estamos orgullosos de ti, tenemos. Te queremos mucho.
¿Les gusta venir a Indiana?
Sí, y más por todas las ayudas que nos ayudan con nuestros hijos.
¿Qué es lo que más les gusta del programa Migrant?
El enfoque y la atención que le dan a nuestros hijos. Uno como padre, ¿qué puede decir, verdad? O sea, uno puede andar, uno viene y uno sabe bien que viene a sufrirle a la labor, porque con el tiempo, con el agua, con el lodo, uno sabe a lo que viene. Pero uno anda bien contenta al saber que nuestros hijos les están educando, les están ofreciendo a ser alguien mejor, ¿no? Nuestra mentalidad para uno, ¿verdad? No es que nuestros hijos anden igual como nosotros. Nosotros queremos que nuestros hijos sean el día de mañana algo más, el futuro del mañana. Ellos son el futuro del mañana.
Sometimes people think that my grandfather was a migrant worker, so I'm going to be one. You don't have to be one. It's by choice. But if we offer the tools for you to become a doctor, a lawyer, would you want that? And they do.
That's part of our job, I feel, that we have to educate our students that there are options. And if they don't see what else is out there, they'll never know that there's something different than working in the fields every day.
Getting them in here and getting them interested into education, opening up those doors, showing them what they can do. Just step out of the migrant ideology of life, not saying it's bad. Giving the student the choice. I want to be a migrant worker. I want to go do something else.
Well, we had 3 of us that went to school.
And the ones that didn't?
Chose their own path. It's just, I would say, getting caught up in their own life and making their own choices. Not all graduated from high school.
Did that affect their career path?
It did. When I talk to the parents, it's like talking to my mother. And that took a minute. I take this very serious because my mom, she means a lot to me. And I see that in the parents when I see their eyes and what they've been through. It's what makes me want to do more, go above and beyond what I need to do.
Tengo 12 años, mi esposo tiene 20 años trabajando en la labor. Pero los recuerdos son muy bonitos, porque pues andamos en familia y nos movemos de un lado para otro en la espiga y así, ¿verdad? Pero también hemos tenido pues contratiempos, pero en sí hemos estado felices porque siempre hemos viajado juntos con toda la familia. Yo también les amo bastante, mis 2 bebitas. Pero a mí más, ¿verdad?
I think if there's anything that I'd want to convey is that I think we have to think differently about the Migrant Education Program. And we have an opportunity to empower families by flipping the concept. So instead of the program going and finding the families, what if the families found us? I believe the families know what they need. So if we provide that access at their fingertips, what would happen?
I would say it shows them that we care. A lot of times you wouldn't believe how thankful they are to be here, the parents and students. If they can buy into it and they can say, you know what, if they care about me, maybe I can try harder in the classroom. Or they're doing these things, they're staying after school with me in our after school program and teaching me things, maybe it's something that I can do later with someone in life.
We're so fixated on standardized tests and meeting this average that just doesn't exist in learning. And you have programs like this, that this is what you look for as an educator to keep you going, because this kind of program is why I became a teacher.
I think it's just putting hope into these kids' hearts and knowing that they can do this, and if they need help along the way, that's okay. Everyone needs help at some point in their life, and we're here to give them that help they need at this point of their life, because this is when they need it.
In my community, I live in Indiana. Their community is the United States and the world. My dream is for these children to be able to have a pattern of behavior where they know that they can go to Florida and have a safe place to learn and live. They come to Indiana and have a safe place to learn and live, and go to Texas. And for our country to accept these people and realize that there's not just those people, but they're our people.
I think at the very heart of it all is just providing an opportunity for children in need. Give me a minute. When I look at these faces in the hallway, I see myself. It is giving them what I now can give my own children. And I think this is what all parents want. They all want to be able to give their children something more than they have had.
The change that I've seen with our families, the opportunities that our students have had, the awareness, the empathy that we've been able to establish outside of our migrant world and those that knew it and were already intimate with it, has been extraordinarily rewarding. The Indiana Department of Education isn't the whole entire program. There is no way that we would have been able to do what we did or be successful without the support of all of our people in the field. When I look back, as I reflect on all the work that's been done, these are not the first tears that this program has caused me. It makes me obviously emotional and very proud to see what we did.
Years from now, I love to see the kids can be in agriculture, but not going to the fields. They stop having that hard life, going from one place to another.
¿Cuáles son sus esperanzas, sus sueños para sus hijos?
Pues a nosotros, nuestra esperanza y lo tenemos en nuestros hijos, le tenemos fe de que ellos lleguen a ser unas personas con sus estudios y tengan una buena carrera.
El sueño de nosotros es que nuestros hijos terminen su carrera, que realicen sus sueños, todo lo que ellos han soñado. Es el sueño que tenemos con ellos.
Howard Van Smith, awarded a Pulitzer Prize for his series of articles on migrant labor in the Miami News, says this.
I knew next to nothing of the migrant situation
4 to 5 years ago. I knew there were migrant camps, but a migrant was just a person who worked on a farm to me. After seeing what I have, I am sure that I will devote the rest of my life to doing what little I can to help solve this problem.